All right. Diving in today, getting deep, deep into the autobiography of Malcolm X,
Oh, powerful stuff.
as told to Alex Haley. So, you shared some excerpts. Really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think our mission here, it's really to get into the experiences, the formative experiences
Yeah.
of this incredibly influential figure.
Yeah. And how much he changed. Like his evolution is just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking early years, right? Like his whole upbringing,
Right from the beginning.
streets to the Nation of Islam to these just incredible shifts later in his life.
It's an amazing story.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Let's talk about his family, right? The influences that shaped him early on. His father, Reverend Earl Little, was a Baptist minister, but that's not all. He was also deeply involved with Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. Now, listener, think about Garvey's movement for a second. It was all about black pride, self-reliance, and a return to Africa. Imagine how radical that was back then.
Yeah. And, that was way different from the whole integration idea that was going around.
Totally. So Malcolm's father, being so involved with Garvey's movement, well, he became a controversial figure.
Oh, absolutely. Challenging the whole racial hierarchy. People, both black and white, saw him as a real threat.
And you can see how that controversy played out. Malcolm talks about a terrifying night when the KKK attacked their home. Picture this. Klansmen on horseback, torches blazing, smashing every window with their gun butts. It's a scene straight out of a nightmare. His father must have been furious, facing down this kind of hate.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And for young Malcolm, this wasn't some abstract concept of racism. It was real, it was violent, and it was happening right in front of him.
Listener, think about that for a moment. Malcolm's understanding of race wasn't theoretical. It was shaped by these moments of terror and his father's righteous anger. It's a foundation that would stay with him throughout his life.
Yeah, it's a heavy foundation, no doubt. But there's this interesting thing about his mother, too.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it.
Malcolm talks about her strong intuition, almost like she could see the future.
He does, doesn't he? He says she had this strong intuition of things about to happen and that he and his siblings shared that trait.
And, he even mentions how he was never really caught off guard by anything except for one major event later in his life.
Yeah, and we all know what that event was, right? The disillusionment with Elijah Muhammad.
Right. It's like there's this dramatic irony woven into the story.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, did Malcolm, looking back, ever reflect on that intuition?
It's a good question. And, it speaks to a certain kind of awareness, a sensitivity to the world around them.
Totally. But amidst all of this, let's not forget the harsh reality they lived in.
Oh, yeah.
Poverty. I mean, extreme poverty. Malcolm describes times when they didn't even have a nickel. They were so hungry they felt dizzy. Can you imagine that?
It's hard to even fathom.
Their meals often consisted of boiled dandelion greens.
Dandelion greens.
I know, right? And their neighbors, so cruel, would call it fried grass. Sometimes they had oatmeal or cornmeal mush, and that was it for the day.
It's a reminder, isn't it? A reminder of the systemic inequalities that left black families struggling for the most basic necessities.
It really is. And to survive, young Malcolm and his brother Filbert would go out and hunt rabbits with their father's .22 rifle. Imagine that responsibility on such young shoulders.
It's a level of self-reliance that's just unimaginable for most of us.
It really is. And there's this touching detail, about how young Malcolm would time his visits to families they knew around dinner time. He would often go to the Gohanas family. They were older churchgoers who were raising their nephew Big Boy and also housing old Mrs. Adcock. He knew they were aware of his hunger, but they never embarrassed him. They always welcomed him for supper.
It's a beautiful example of community support, that quiet dignity, that shared understanding.
Absolutely. But even in childhood, race played a huge role. Malcolm tells this story about a Halloween prank where a group of kids, including some white boys, were tipping over outhouses. But one time, the farmer tricked them. He moved the outhouse away from the hole. And guess what? The two white boys, always leading the charge, fell right into that smelly pit.
Oh, no.
I know, right? And Malcolm, who was right behind them, barely avoided the same fate. And he makes this observation with a child's insight that the whites were so used to taking the lead, this time it had really gotten them in the hole.
It's a funny anecdote, but it also speaks volumes about those ingrained racial dynamics, even in childhood.
It does. And then there's this memory of his mother taking them to Adventist meetings. They were often the only black family there. Now, the Adventists, he says, were the friendliest white people they had ever met, but still, the children noticed differences. The food wasn't seasoned the same way, and they even said white people had a different smell.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Those subtle observations that children make about difference, even in a seemingly welcoming environment.
It is. And then, after his father's tragic death, there was the intervention of the state authorities. They came to interview the Gohanas family as a possible home for Malcolm.
Oh, wow.
His mother fought back, she resisted. Can you imagine that fear of losing her children to a system that so often failed black families?
Absolutely. That distrust of authority, it's completely understandable.
And then, after his father's passing, his mother entered into a relationship with a large, dark man from Lansing. Malcolm suggests she may have done this to try and find stability and maybe even scare off the state from taking her kids away.
It's a plausible theory, A single mother in poverty with several children. She would have been seen as incredibly vulnerable.
And it speaks to that desperation to keep her family together in a society that offered them so little support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this leads us to Malcolm's experiences in foster care and in school. When he was finally taken from his mother, he felt this powerful sense of not wanting to go back. He felt like their family had become just a case, a statistic, because of society's failures.
Powerful insight for a young person.
Mm.
He's already seeing that dehumanizing effect of poverty, how institutions reduce people to just numbers.
And listener, that's a crucial observation. It's shaping his worldview, his understanding of how systems work, or rather, fail to work.
Absolutely.
And there's this interesting detail about his time at the detention home. Even when his release dates came up, they were often ignored. He stayed longer than he was supposed to.
Really?
And he attributes this to the influence of Mrs. Swerlin, the white woman who ran the home. He says she was actually glad to stay. She didn't want to leave. It seems she offered him a level of stability, maybe even affection, that he hadn't experienced before.
That's a complex dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah,
Even within a flawed system, individual connections can make a world of difference.
totally. Eventually, he ended up at Mason Junior High School. At first, he was the only black student. Later, the younger Lyons children joined him. They were from a well-respected black family in town. Malcolm talks about his early success in school, how he was even elected class president in 7th grade. But here's the thing. He admits he was trying so hard in every way I could to be white.
That's a familiar struggle, isn't it? Trying to
Yeah.
fit into a dominant culture that doesn't fully accept you.
It is, and it's something many people from marginalized groups experience. But then there's this pivotal moment. He realizes he's actually smarter than most of the white students, but it doesn't seem to matter. He says, and I'm quoting here, "It was a surprising thing that I had never thought of it that way before, but I realized that whatever I wasn't, I was smarter than nearly all of those white kids. But apparently I was still not intelligent enough, in their eyes, to become whatever I wanted to be." I know, right? It's a turning point. He starts to withdraw from white people. The word nigger, which used to just bounce off him, now cuts deep. Listener, this is the beginning of something big. It's the start of his disillusionment with fitting in and the seeds of his later embrace of black identity and pride.
It's a powerful realization that his abilities, his intelligence, are being judged through the lens of race.
And it's a realization that changes everything. He notices that people stop using the word nigger around him so much. Even his teachers and classmates seem to sense his shift. Mrs. Swerlin and that state man, Maynard Allen, they're confused. They can't understand why he's not happy, why he's not content fitting into their world.
That disconnect is so telling. They see his outward success, but can't grasp the internal conflict, the growing awareness of injustice.
It's a classic example of that blind spot, right?
Yeah.
So he moves to Boston to live with his half-sister, Ella. And he talks about his first impressions of the Hill Negroes in Roxbury. Remember, listener, this term was sometimes used, often with a bit of a sneer, to describe black folks who were trying hard to assimilate into mainstream white society. They often adopted what they saw as markers of middle-class respectability.
This is about fitting in, right? Trying to erase those differences.
Exactly. And Malcolm, he sees right through it. He notices how they use these fancy job titles that often mask pretty menial jobs. He sees their self-delusion, their efforts to appear more successful than they actually are.
He's got a sharp eye, doesn't he? He's noticing those different ways people navigate a racially biased society.
He does, but in contrast, he's drawn to the sharp-dressed young cats of Harlem. They've got their conked hair, their seemingly effortless lifestyle. Listener, a conk was a hairstyle back then, a chemical process to straighten black hair. It was painful, and, looking back, it was seen as a way of conforming to white beauty standards.
A way of fitting in.
Exactly. And for Malcolm, this is a whole new world. It's exciting. It's filled with liquor, cigarettes, gambling. Even young kids are gambling. and this vibrant new slang.
It's a rejection of those more conventional paths, an embrace of a different kind of black identity.
And he's surprised to see interracial couples openly socializing, something he hadn't encountered in Lansing. It speaks to a different social dynamic in this urban setting.
It's like a different world, different rules.
Totally.
Yeah.
And at a pool hall, he meets Shorty, another guy from Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, from back home?
Yeah, and Shorty becomes his guide to Harlem life.
That must have been a crucial connection.
It was. Shorty explains the social hierarchy in Harlem, how the Hill Negroes are looked down upon by those more embedded in the street scene.
There's a whole internal dynamic within the black community.
Oh, absolutely. And Shorty himself, he's got this slave job at the pool hall, but he's saving up for saxophone lessons. He wants to form a band.
There are dreams even within the hustle.
There are. Malcolm eventually lands a job shining shoes at the Roseland State Ballroom. He learns the tricks of the trade, how to shine shoes fast, and make that jive noise with the rag to get bigger tips.
It's about performance, even in a job like that.
It is. And he shines shoes for some big names. Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Lionel Hampton, Johnny Hodges. He even tells this funny story about Johnny Hodges owing him for a shine.
Imagine that. Shining shoes for jazz legends.
It's incredible. And during this time, he gets his first conch.
Ah, the conch.
Later on, he reflects on how ridiculous it was, how it represented a loss of Negro identity.
It's a powerful symbol, isn't it? That rejection of the conch, a rejection of trying to fit into white beauty standards.
It is. He becomes an avid Lindy hopper, known for his energetic style. Music and dance, they become a huge part of his life in Harlem.
A way to express himself, to connect with others.
Totally. And then, impulsively, he quits his job at the Roseland and immediately buys his second zoot suit.
The zoot suit, a statement of rebellion, of individuality.
It was. He takes a job at a soda fountain on the Hill, but he can't stand the customers, those Hill Negroes with their phony accents and pretentious attitudes.
He sees right through their facades.
He does. He meets Laura, a white girl who admires him, but he realizes he's losing interest in the books he used to love back in Michigan.
It's a distraction, isn't it? That new lifestyle, pulling him away from his intellectual pursuits.
It is. He takes Laura to the Roseland, which his sister Ella disapproves of, but Malcolm suspects she's already thinking about marriage.
Oh, the clash of generations, of cultures.
It's there. Laura even enters the Roseland's dance contest, her unique style attracting a lot of attention.
Imagine that, an interracial couple on the dance floor back then. It shows you how even in a segregated society, some spaces allowed for that kind of interaction.
It does. And then there's Sophia, a white woman from Beacon Hill. Shorty teases him about it, saying that having Sophia as his girlfriend elevates Shorty's status.
Wow, the complexities of race and attraction.
It's there. Ella, concerned about his path, wants him out of Boston, away from Sophia. Meanwhile, Malcolm is itching to go to New York City. He's heard stories about the Big Apple, about Harlem from his father, from news reports about Joe Louis' victories.
New York, and Harlem especially, held a certain mystique, right?
Absolutely. It was a symbol of black culture, of achievement. He gets a job as a busboy and waiter on the New Haven Railroad, and for the first time, he sees Washington, D.C.
Really?
Yeah, and he's shocked by the poverty he sees among black people just blocks from the capital.
It's that jarring contrast, isn't it? The symbols of American power and then the harsh reality of poverty so close by.
It is, but he also experiences the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem. He sees energetic dancing to bands like Lionel Hampton and Dinah Washington. He even mentions the famous Flyin' Home story and that Earl Hines song Second Balcony Jump that was inspired by a reefer-smoking dancer at the Apollo.
He's soaking up all that vibrant culture.
He is, but his railroad job ends due to a passenger complaint. He quickly finds work at Small's Paradise in Harlem, owned by Ed and Charlie Smalls.
Oh, Small's Paradise, a legendary spot.
It was, and Charlie Small hires him based on Malcolm's quiet observation of the hustling scene. He sees something in him.
He recognizes a certain potential.
He does. At Smalls, Malcolm learns about the history of black people in New York City, how they were pushed from one ghetto to another before ending up in Harlem.
He gives him a historical perspective on that ongoing segregation.
It does. He describes the vibrant atmosphere of Harlem in the 1930s and 40s, the music, the dance, the Lindy Hop's origins, the numbers racket, all those colorful characters.
It was a cultural hub, the testament to resilience.
It was. And he notices how white people are treated differently during the day in Harlem, more guardedly. But at night, in the nightclubs, they're welcomed.
It's that complex reality of a segregated city, right? that economic reliance on white patronage.
It is. He learns the first rule of the hustling society.
Yeah.
Trust no one outside your inner circle.
A necessary precaution in that world.
Absolutely. Even Sophia comes to visit him in Harlem. At first, she's bothered by his living situation, but then she befriends some of the prostitutes.
It shows you that human connection can transcend those social barriers.
It does. And he gets deep into selling reefers, making good money, feeling a sense of freedom among the other hustlers.
It's a dangerous freedom, but a freedom nonetheless.
It is. He goes to the movies all the time, loving those tough guy films and musicals. He even smokes reefers with his customers.
It's a blurring of lines, isn't it? Business and pleasure.
It is. He visits Shorty back in Boston, who has now formed his band, and they share stories about their wild lives.
That bond endures.
It does. His hustling intensifies. He starts traveling with a band, selling reefers, even getting mistaken for a band member himself.
The lines get blurred, identities shift.
They do. His brother Reginald comes to visit him in New York.
Family ties remain strong.
They do. And to avoid the draft, he pretends he wants to join the Japanese army, playing up this high and crazy act for the army intelligence spies in Harlem.
Risky move.
Oh, absolutely. But it shows his cunning. He has this close call with the police while working with Sammy. As the cops arrive, he throws them off by asking for directions.
Clever thinking under pressure.
It is. Reginald learns to hustle too, selling loot stuff that's often legitimate but presented as stolen in barbershops and bars.
The hustling mentality spreads.
It does. And thanks to his reputation and a favor he does for a white mobster, Malcolm gets into the numbers racket.
The underworld, it's all connected.
It is. His drug use escalates. He's smoking opium with his white actor friends.
It's a downward spiral.
It is. He works for Jaime, a Jewish guy who owns rundown restaurants and bars, helping him remodel them for resale.
Always hustling, always working angles.
Always. He wins big in the numbers, but he also feels this growing paranoia, the danger closing in.
The highs and lows of that life.
They're constant. His drug use warps his sense of time.
Detachment from reality.
It's there. He plays poker with John the Gambler, showing off his skills at reading people and bluffing.
Skills honed on the streets.
Absolutely. Rudy, another hustler, tells him about the strange sexual habits of some wealthy white people, habits they exploit in their robberies.
Targeting the vulnerable, preying on their secrets.
It's a dark side of the hustle. He starts planning burglaries with Shorty and Rudy, with Rudy as their expert at finding targets and casing places.
This is a serious escalation.
It is. They learn the ins and outs of burglary, the different ties of places to hit, the best times to strike.
It's a criminal profession with its own set of rules.
It is. In a reckless moment, Malcolm plays Russian roulette to test Shorty and Rudy's nerve.
It's a dangerous game.
Oh, absolutely. Their first successful burglary is the home of the old man who hired Rudy to powder him.
Exploiting a position of trust.
They develop a system, using girls to scout out potential targets.
A well-organized operation.
It is. They have a close call when a homeowner returns unexpectedly.
A constant reminder of the risks.
Always. But finally, he gets caught trying to retrieve a stolen watch from a jewelry shop, and by this point, carrying a gun has become second nature.
A way of life.
It was. Now, prison changes everything. He's thrown into solitary confinement, feeling the full force of the legal limit. He paces, he curses, and because of his anti-religious views, he earns the nickname Satan.
Solitary confinement, it breaks people.
It does. But he meets Bimby, an older burglar who makes a positive impression.
Even in prison, mentors can be found.
They can, and Malcolm refuses to eat pork in prison. It causes a stir.
A small act of defiance, maybe, but significant nonetheless.
It is. And his sister Ella, she doesn't give up on him. She works to get him transferred to the Norfolk prison colony, an experimental rehabilitation jail.
Ella, a constant source of support.
She is. Norfolk is a different kind of place. There's more freedom, and importantly, a large library.
A chance for learning, for growth.
It is, and Malcolm, he starts reading voraciously.
A turning point.
Absolutely. And then his brother Reginald visits. He asks him this question. Malcolm, if a man knew every imaginable thing that there is to know, who would he be? And that question, it leads Malcolm to the concept of God.
A profound question.
It is. Reginald comes back for another visit, and this time he talks about the devil white man and the brainwashed black man. These are the teachings of the Nation of Islam.
It's a framework, isn't it? A way of understanding the world, the racial dynamics, the power structures.
It is. And it resonates deeply with Malcolm. He learns about the core tenets of the Nation of Islam, how history has been whitewashed, how the black man was the original man, how the white man is the devil, how the Negro was created through slavery and rape, how black people have been indoctrinated to hate themselves in Africa, and how Christianity worships a white god.
Radical ideas, challenging the dominant narrative.
They are. He learns about Mr. Jacob, the scientist who supposedly created the white race as a devil race. And he learns about Master W.D. Fard, who is considered half black and half white, and how he met Elijah Muhammad in Detroit in 1931 and gave him Allah's message for the lost found nation of Islam.
A whole new worldview.
It is. And he starts reading the dictionary, copying down words, expanding his vocabulary and understanding. He reads about the horrors of the slave trade and European colonialism. He learns about the conflicts between China and the West, the Opium Wars, the Boxer Rebellion, how the signs in China read Chinese and dogs not allowed. He connects it all to the contemporary anti-white sentiment in Red China.
He's making connections, seeing patterns.
He is. He starts sharing these beliefs with other black inmates, identifying those who are ready to hear that the white man is the devil.
It's the beginning of his ministry.
It is. He starts debating at Norfolk Prison Colony, honing his skills, researching both sides of every issue, anticipating counter-arguments. He enjoys challenging the white man's narrative. He even argues for unconventional theories like how King James was the real Shakespeare.
He's a natural debater, sharp and articulate.
He is. His brother Reginald leaves Islam, and Malcolm sees it as a sign, the chastisement of Allah. He has this vision of Master W.D. Fard, and because of his growing influence and his refusal to take inoculations, he's transferred back to Charlestown Prison. But he continues spreading the teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
His commitment is unwavering.
It is. He's paroled in 1952 and moves to Detroit to live with his brother Wilfred. He gets a job at a furniture store, and he visits Temple No. 1 in Detroit, impressed by the Muslims' conduct and appearance.
It's a community he's drawn to.
Absolutely. He meets the messenger Elijah Muhammad at Temple No. 2 in Chicago. He's deeply moved by the experience. He has dinner with Elijah Muhammad and his family and feels the warmth of their concern. He becomes a dedicated follower and speaker for the Nation of Islam, preaching about the polluted state of black people due to white influence and the need to reject the white man's so-called love.
It's a message of self-reliance, of separation.
It is. He gets a job at the Garwood factory, and because of his association with Elijah Muhammad, an FBI agent visits him. He learns about Elijah Muhammad's life story. His small stature, his role as a peacemaker among his siblings, his early awareness of race, how he had to quit school due to poverty, his self-education through the Bible, and how he felt its words were a locked door.
It's a story of struggle and revelation.
It is. He hears about the origins of the Nation of Islam, how Master W.D. Fard arrived and chose Elijah Muhammad as his messenger, how Elijah Muhammad traveled and established temples, facing jealousy from other ministers, studying hidden truths in the Congressional Library.
A movement takes shape.
It does. And Malcolm's speeches in the temple, they're passionate, they're fiery. He talks about Elijah Muhammad's sacrifices, about how the white man wants to keep black people asleep.
He's a powerful orator.
He is. He establishes strict rules for the Muslims, emphasizing peace, avoiding aggression, but not turning the other cheek. He reunites with Shorty in Boston, reassuring him of his seriousness about Islam, but still connecting with him through their old street language.
He doesn't forget where he came from.
No, he doesn't. He's frustrated by the lack of converts in Harlem, even though he sees the need for Islam's teachings everywhere he looks.
He's up against other black nationalist groups, right?
Yeah, there's competition. He learns about Elijah Muhammad's teachings on marriage and the roles of men and women. He's surprised by his attraction to Sister Betty X and tries to avoid her.
That's interesting.
It is. And then, in his direct, non-romantic way, he proposes marriage to Betty.
No beating around the bush.
Not at all. She accepts immediately and moves to Detroit. They meet her foster parents, who are surprisingly friendly. With Wilfred's help, they get married in Indiana.
A whirlwind romance.
It is.
Yeah.
He surprises his brother Filbert in Lansing with the news of his marriage. Betty goes back to nursing school, and they quietly announce their marriage. But then Mr. Muhammad announces it in Detroit, surprising those who knew how Malcolm had been avoiding the sisters.
A public declaration.
It is. Malcolm starts the newspaper, Muhammad Speaks. He takes the photos, assembles the content, does it all himself. He deals with the media, their misrepresentations.
That's a tough job.
It is. He has this encounter with Bishop T. Chickenwing about the number of Muslims and accusations of being anti-Christian. Malcolm responds by saying that Christianity was a tool of enslavement.
A pointed response.
It is. Reporters trying to find good white people, and he throws back Hitler and Stalin's indirect impact on black employment. He learns how easily the press can twist his words. He criticizes established black leaders, calling them black bodies with white heads controlled by white powers behind the scenes. He explains the Nation of Islam's stance on separation versus segregation.
He's becoming a public figure, a voice for the nation.
He is, and he's committed to representing Elijah Muhammad and their message. Dr. C. Eric Lincoln publishes a book called The Black Muslims in America, and the press jumps all over it, solidifying that black Muslims label that the nation didn't even want. Malcolm tries for years to correct it, but it sticks.
Labels are powerful.
They are. The Nation of Islam's rallies grow massive. Hundreds of buses travel to hear Elijah Muhammad speak. His speeches are powerful, about freedom from fear and lies. The process for joining the nation is strict, demanding real change. They have success rehabilitating drug addicts by confronting the root causes of addiction. Universities of Islam are established in Detroit and Chicago, teaching black history and Arabic. Elijah Muhammad's children take on key positions within the nation, something Malcolm had advocated for.
The nation is growing, becoming more organized.
It is, and Elijah Muhammad starts trusting Malcolm more, giving him autonomy in certain areas, recognizing how beneficial it is for Malcolm to become a known figure. But he also warns him that as he becomes more famous, he'll be hated out of jealousy.
A prophetic warning.
It is. And Malcolm starts receiving letters from white people after his media appearances. They express fears about divine punishment, about interracial relationships. He critiques token-integrated Negroes who try to escape their blackness. He emphasizes the black masses' desire for human rights and respect. He points out the hypocrisy of the American government promoting democracy abroad while denying it to black Americans at home. He draws parallels between the self-delusion of some German Jews before Hitler and black Americans striving for white acceptance.
He's becoming more and more outspoken.
He is. Then there's the farce on Washington in 1963 and the wave of racial crises that follow in 1964. He becomes the second most sought-after speaker on college campuses after Barry Goldwater. He reports back to Elijah Muhammad that speaking at colleges is good, that it reaches the devilish white man's best minds. But he senses Mr. Muhammad's reluctance, maybe even a bit of insecurity.
That's an interesting observation.
It is, and in his college speeches, Malcolm emphasizes the white man's limited understanding of the human spirit, talks about the impending divine judgment. He points to the decline of European colonial powers and the rise of non-white nations. But rumors about Elijah Muhammad's personal life start circulating, even as they're officially denied.
There's tension building.
There is. And Malcolm, he becomes hypersensitive to criticism within the nation. He stops certain activities because of jealousy from the Chicago leadership. He changes his teachings at New York Mosque 7, focusing on a person's accomplishments rather than their weaknesses, avoiding certain moral subjects he'd emphasized before. Then he hears about the adultery talk spreading in Chicago, damaging the nation's reputation.
This is a turning point, isn't it?
It is. He learns the truth about Elijah Muhammad's personal life, and he's devastated. He feels betrayed. He questions everything. He realizes he believed in Mr. Muhammad more than Mr. Muhammad believed in himself. And after 12 years of dedication to the nation, he finally starts thinking for himself.
A painful awakening.
It is. The Chicago Muslims disapprove of his association with Cassius Clay. He receives his first direct death threat from within the nation. He sees potential enemies everywhere. He talks about the ghetto hustler as the most dangerous black man in America because he has no respect for white power and no internal restraints. And he starts to conceive of a new organization, one that embraces all faiths of black men, one that puts the Nation of Islam's preaching into practice.
This is a major shift in his thinking.
It is. And then there's the Hajj.
The pilgrimage to Mecca.
For Orthodox Muslims, it's a religious obligation. Arabian, Middle Eastern, and North African Muslims in the U.S. had been suggesting he experienced true Islam. He meets an Orthodox Muslim who shares the saying, "No man has believed perfectly until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself." His sister Ella, who's already left the Nation of Islam and embraced Orthodox Islam, supports him, even finances his pilgrimage.
It's a journey of rediscovery.
It is, and there are signs. During the visa application process, the Saudi ambassador requires approval from Dr. Mahmoud Shawarbi, and Dr. Shawarbi agrees to meet him immediately. When he arrives in Cairo, he's struck by the warm, friendly atmosphere among pilgrims of all complexions, a stark contrast to the color problem in America.
A sense of unity, of brotherhood.
Exactly. Fellow English-speaking pilgrims look out for him. He wears the simple Iram garb, the same as everyone else. He's nervous presenting his American passport, a symbol of everything that Islam is not. But when the other pilgrims learn he's an American Muslim, their attitudes change. They welcome him.
His faith transcends his nationality.
It does. He's taken to perform the morning prayer, and he regrets not knowing the Orthodox rituals in Arabic. He remembers learning prayers phonetically in prison from Abdul Hamid. He's welcomed and hosted by Dr.